Hey friend, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. Listen, if this is your first time here, welcome. I give lighthearted reviews and recaps of some of my favorite TV shows and movies. So if this is something that interests you, go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you like what you see, hit that like button for your girl. And of course, leave me a comment. I have a lot more content coming to my channel, and I'm glad you're here. So with that being said, let's get into it. All right, it is 1880 something, New York City. We are back. It is the Gilded Age, season 3, episode 1. We are back with the Russells, the Van Ryans, the Fortes, Peggy Scott and her people. Honey, we are back. I am so excited to be back with the Gilded Age. I love all time period pieces. Give me Downton Abbey, give me The Crown, give me Bridgerton, give me the Gilded Age, give me all of them. I am here for it, and it did not disappoint. So let's just go ahead and get into it. First thing we see when the episode starts, we see horses traveling. It looks like throughout the United States. And like I said, this is the 19th century. So a lot of this area has not been developed yet. Finally, we have where we're settling down in a mining town in Arizona. And we see George Russell. He's getting out along with his assistant, and they're going into, looks like, some kind of saloon. Now, what he's trying to do is he wants to expand his railroads throughout the Midwest. He's all about fast transit. We know that none of this has been developed yet, but his idea is to build railroads that travel fast and will take you from here to there in no time. But his problem is he needs the land in order to be able to do it. Some of this land that he needs are being occupied by miners. And so he has to go out here to meet with, I guess, the miner representative, the one who's going to, kind of negotiate this deal between him and the miners. And so he ends up spending some time there, and he meets up with the miners, and the miners know who he is. The miners know he has money, and they're like, listen, we know how much this land means to you, and we're not just going to just give it to you so that you get rich and we don't get anything. We want to be rich too. We don't want to be George Russell rich, but you got to break us off something. So in the meantime, he's negotiating this. George Russell, he's a businessman, kind of shrewd, but he does have, a little bit of heart. We saw from last year with the union and the union workers and all of that, and how that went down, and how at the last minute he kind of changed his mind on that and caused the fight to end. But there was an ulterior motive to that as well. So although he's a shrewd businessman, he's also looking at big picture. His partner doesn't really seem like this is the best move to make, but he's like, listen, in the long run, it's going to pay off. Just trust me. So anyway, he does end up meeting with the miners, and he agrees with the deal. He does get a telegram in the middle of it saying, hey, you're needed back home. So he leaves his partner there to take care of everything and to close the deal up. And he's got to head back to New York City. And honey, he is really needed in New York. So hopefully his deal goes through in Arizona and he's able to do what he wants to do. But I don't think it's going to go as smoothly as he thinks. So we'll see about that. All right, so back in New York City, it looks like we are going into spring, but they were surprised with snow. So we have a little bit of snow on the ground, and it looks like everyone's excited about it. For the most part, we have the workers outside. They're having snowball fights and just slipping and sliding and playing in the snow. And it's so good to see that they're having a good time in the snow outside. We also see our two favorite men. We've got Church, who kind of runs the house for the Russells, and we have Bannister, who runs the house for the sisters over at their home. So anyway, we know that there's been some, tension between the two of them, but last season they were able to shake it out, and I think they're in a better space. So it was good to see. Anyway, Church goes over to Bannister and asks, hey man, what you got going on over here? Because we got, looks like, people moving in chairs and things of that nature. And he tells him that the mistress of the house is having a temperance meeting there today. And he's like, temperance meeting? I didn't think that Agnes was up for that kind of that kind of cause, temperance meeting. And he's like, no, it's not her, it's Mrs. Forte, which is Ada. And so he's like, but you said mistress of the house. And he was like, yeah, there's been a little bit of a shift in our home recently. And so we remember from last season where we have Agnes, who's always been in charge. It's been her house, it's been her money. And we know that Miss Ada was always there just for not for the ride, but she was the sister that never got married. And so she was just kind of always there with her sister. And the money was there. Agnes married into money. However, Agnes's son Oliver got involved with a lady who was a scammer last season, Maud Beaton, and ended up taking almost all of their riches. So at the end of the season, it looked like they were headed to the poorhouse, honey. It looked like they may have had to sell the house and move out, and everybody was just so upset. They didn't know what to do. And then in the meantime, simultaneously, what was going on last season, Ada met a man who was a reverend or minister, and they ended up getting to know each other, ended up falling in love with each other, and ultimately getting married. He was a simple man. Like I said, he was a minister of such. Anyway, as soon as they got married, came back from their honeymoon, he started to have back issues, which turned out to be cancer. And sadly, at the end of the season, he ended up passing away. And so while all this is going on with the betrayal, with Ma Beaton and the money with Oliver, Ada finds out that she actually came into a large inheritance from her husband. So, sort of like Ada saved the day because they were headed to the poorhouse, but now they don't have to move. However, with Ada now having the money, Ada is the one who's paying the workers. So, Ada's pretty much keeping it going. That means there's been a little bit of a power shift because Ada has the money. Agnes still has the home, and everyone's used to Agnes just running things. She's the older sister, but now Ada does have a say in things, and Agnes is really not here for it. So we'll see what happens with the sisters as they continue to navigate through these waters. I do know with this temperance meeting, Agnes is telling Ada, hey, look, why don't you just throw money to this? Ever since you've come into this money, it seems like you're just jumping on cause after cause after cause, and so she explains to her that there was some, tough times during the grieving. There was a time where she really felt like she didn't want to wake up. And so she feels like she needs to do this to honor her late husband. And being involved in these causes is just a thing to do it. It's not enough just to write a check, but she really wants to be involved and do something to honor her husband's memory. And so Agnes does seem as though she does understand and they're there for support. The temperance meeting was kind of funny. They're talking about getting rid of alcohol, and we know that, honey, they drink. These ladies do have their wine, they do have their champagne. And so it's kind of weird to have this meeting in the house, but it was funny to see. They were all there. Oliver's like, listen, after that meeting, I definitely need a drink. And speaking of Oliver, I guess he's just still licking his wounds from him being beat by Maud Beaton. And no pun intended on that. But anyway, and so he's up in his room. He doesn't want to eat. He doesn't want to go out. He's just, have somebody bring me a tray, and he's kind of licking his wounds and feeling sorry for himself. Um and so Ada does later on tell him, listen, I'm gonna make sure you have clothes, I'm gonna make sure you have food, I'm gonna make sure you have shelter, but I'm not gonna give you an allowance. You're gonna get out there and you're gonna have to work. And maybe Larry Russell can help you out. So they invite him over for dinner. It doesn't seem to work because Oliver is like, listen, I was born rich. I wasn't born to invent something, then become rich. Like, I was born that way. But you have no money, Oliver. So you're going to have to get up and get out of that house and go do something because it's not going to just come that quick. Although Ada does have all the money, she's just not going to give the money to you, Oliver. You're going to have to get out there and earn it. So hats off to Ada for that. She is taking care of Oliver, but she's like, you got to get up, get out, and get some. And I'm here for it. Good for you, Ada. All right, so over in Brooklyn, we see Peggy Scott. We've got Peggy and her mama and her daddy, and it looks like they're all three leaving the house. It looks like Peggy is on her way to Manhattan, but she is stuck in the snow. And she's telling her mom, hey, look, don't worry about me. Her dad's like, I got her. I'll take her to the train station. But the snow is kind of messing up everything in terms of, transportation. Peggy has the exciting news that an excerpt from her book is going to be published in one of the Black Christian newspapers. So that's exciting. She does end up making it to Manhattan, and she shares the news with Ada and Agnes. She's kind of rushing because Ada has asked her to take notes for this temperance meeting. And we all know from seasons before that Peggy doesn't work for Ada, she works for Agnes. But because of the power shift now, because Agnes doesn't have any money, Agnes is like, oh, so you're using my secretary to take notes? So it's like everything that Ada does now, Agnes has a problem with it. But Peggy is super excited that, her work is being acknowledged and being published. She does seem like she has a little bit of a cold, and throughout the episode, her cold ends up getting worse, so much so that they have to end up calling a doctor. It's actually Agnes's doctor. But when the doctor gets there and goes upstairs to check on Peggy, he comes immediately downstairs and refuses to see her because she's black. So Agnes is like, "What do you mean you're not going to see her because she's colored?" And he's just like, "I just don't do that. Not with colored people. I don't see colored people." Agnes is like, "You're going to pay for that." So I don't feel bad for the doctor because he did what he did, but honey, I don't think it's going to be, farewell for the doctor now that he has denied Peggy because she was sick just based on the color of her skin. So shout out to Peggy. I'm hoping that everything turns out with her. She's got a really, really bad cold. Looks like she's got the flu. And we know back then and that time of day, stuff like that could turn into something a whole lot worse. And I'm just hoping that Peggy can get the care that she needs. Towards the end of the episode, they did send for Peggy's mom and dad. They sent a message. So we'll probably see them come scoop up Peggy and take her back home or take her to a doctor. Peggy is sick, y'all. She needs help. All right, y'all. So at the Russells, we see our girl Bertha. Hey, girl. Hey, she's talking to church and she's, telling church that she wants the house together. They're anticipating the arrival of the Duke here soon. And in the meantime, she's just telling church, just kind of keep this close hold, okay? You don't need to tell the kids about it or whatever, but just make sure that the house is squared away. So just as he walks away, Gladys comes up and tells her mom, hey, look, we're going to go for a walk, me and Larry. We're going to go check out the snow and just kind of, just go for a walk and we'll be back. And she's like, all right, you guys be careful out there. And Gladys, be back here by 3 o'clock because you're going to go get your picture taken. She's getting a painting drawn of her. And so she needs to be back at the house. So as they're leaving the house across the street, Larry sees Marion, who is the niece of the sisters across the street. You guys remember last episode, they finally shared a kiss. We know from the other seasons there's been some flirtation, some will they, won't they. And it seemed like at the end of last season, they finally did kiss and maybe solidify their relationship. It was on the heels of her breaking an engagement off with the other fellow that she was seeing last season. That wasn't good for her because he was still in love with his ex-wife. But anyway, I'm so glad that she didn't go through with that. And it seems like her heart is with Larry Russell, and I'm so glad for it. I think that she's a sweet girl. Marion is a sweet girl and she deserves to be happy, but she doesn't want to make it public and let everybody know what's going on yet because she feels like it's too soon. And Larry kind of understands, but he's like, listen, I am really feeling you. Please don't let me wait too long. And I really feel like Marion feels the same way, but she's just kind of a little hesitant about coming forward and coming out with it right now. She seems like it's a little bit too fast for it. So she kind of just wants to slow it down and just remain discreet. In the meantime, we do see Gladys. She's walking and it seems like she kind of ducks behind one of the houses and goes around the corner and she's kind of sneaking to see the love of her life, which is Billy. And y'all remember Billy from last season. He was the one that she was waving at in the box when she was sitting next to the Duke at the opening of the Met. And her mom was just like, who are you over there waving at? And he's feeling her, she's feeling him. And he is like, listen, why don't I just have a talk with your father and just let him know that I want to take your hand in marriage? And she's like, well, if you really think that you really want to do it, but you got to wait because he's out of town. And she's telling him about, her mom's plan for the Duke and this, that, and the third. But she says, remember, my dad is not going to let that happen because he promised me, and which he did last season. He said that he promises that she is going to be able to marry who she wants to marry for her, not for anybody else. So Gladys is thinking that her father, Mr. Russell, George, is going to be able to keep Bertha from having her just marry this Duke. And so we'll see what happens with that. But he did promise that for his baby girl Gladys. So we'll see what happens with that, because we all know that whatever Miss Bertha wants, she seems to get. But at the end of the day, George Russell is George Russell. So we'll see what happens there. But shout out to the Russell kids. I hope they both get the love that they deserve. Okay, so back at the temperance meeting, we're seeing that the meeting is over and we see our girl Aurora. Hey, girl, nice to see you. And she's telling the ladies that she has to go because her and Charles are going to catch the last act at the Met. And so she's got to go and get ready for that. So they're like, okay, we'll see you later. So back at the house, she's waiting for Charles to come home. And after a while, he does arrive and she's like, hey, baby, I was waiting for you. I was a little worried. I thought maybe you were held up because of the snow. And so, she's just, shall we go? And she's getting herself ready for them, thinking that they're getting ready to go to the Met. And he's like, can we come over here and sit down and talk, please? I have something to tell you. And so he pretty much just tells her that he is he has been spending a lot of time with someone else and he wants a divorce. Now, this is something that is probably uncommon back in the 19th century. And so she's like, divorce? He's like, yes, I haven't been happy for a while. And I met someone else. I've been spending a lot of time with her and she's who I want to be with. So, and, the way that he just kind of says it, I mean, I guess there's no easy way to say that when you're saying that you do want a divorce, but it was just sort of like he was just telling her something and like she was just supposed to be like, oh well, all right then. This is something that is just mind-blowing for her. If you look at the time frame and the time of that it was, she's completely dependent on him. She doesn't work. She's a lady of society. And now how is this going to look for her? She's probably going to be outcasted, which is what she's expressing to him. And at the end of the day, he doesn't seem to care about any of that. He's just like, listen, I'm not happy. I want a divorce. I can't do it. We all know that the only way to do this is for you to initiate it. And it's based on, being unfaithful. And I'm telling you right now that I have been unfaithful. And so we need to go ahead and get this divorce going. And she's like, absolutely not. I will not give you a divorce. And by the way, who is it? Who is this woman that you've been seeing? So he tells her the woman's name. She's a widow. And so I don't know if we'll see her, later on in the season, but he's just being, honest and upfront and telling her the whole thing and telling her he wants out. He does tell her later on that she can just go to Newport and he'd set her up there. But as far as like her social life, that's pretty much over. She's not going to be invited to anything. Nobody's going to want to hang out with her because she's a divorcee. And that's what they do with people back then that have been divorced. It's really, really sad. I feel bad for Aurora, but she does say at the end of their conversation that she's not going to do it. She's not going to divorce him. And so he was like, well, we're both going to be unhappy. And I don't know what that means, but I don't like, for him to be throwing threats out at her. I mean, she did nothing wrong. He came in, said he wanted to be with somebody else. That's all well and good, but give her some time to kind of digest it, and to not be okay with it, but just do what needs to be done so that everybody can move forward. But just that whole, oh, we're both going to be unhappy, you're just now telling her, let her digest it, let her, just come to grips with everything. And she's completely devastated. And I'm sure that everybody else is as well. She goes and she does tell the sisters about it, and they're not happy. We'll see what happens with this because, like I said, I think this is kind of uncharted waters in this day and time in the 19th century. So we'll see how this plays out. But my heart goes out to Miss Aurora. All right. So if you guys remember, I was saying earlier that Ada was having a conversation with Agnes's son, and I may have called him Oliver, but his name is actually Oscar. So let me correct myself on that. His name's Oscar. Anyway, Ada and Oscar are talking, and Oscar, like I said, is not feeling himself. He's licking his wounds and feeling bad about what happened. And so Ada's saying, hey, listen, you need to get back into it. You need to find something to do to make yourself some money, and maybe Larry Russell can help you out. So I think we should invite Mr. Russell over for dinner. Well, of course, Marion's all for it because that's her boo thing. So she's like, okay, yeah, that'd be a great idea. And we can also hear more about them going into partners together, talking about now Jack, who is the footman that works for the sister's household. And he has invented something that helps out the alarm clock so that they don't stick. And he got it patented last season. And so him and Larry Russell are going to go into business together to try to get this thing up and running, and they need investors. So I think that when he does go to dinner and sits down with them, he's telling them about the fact that he does have meetings coming up with the investors. But he also says that he wants to go alone and doesn't want to take Jack with him. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, now I want you to be open and honest. I want you to be upfront with Jack because he's a hardworking man down there and he deserves this. So I hope that Larry doesn't try to screw him over. Also at dinner, we also hear that Marion has a new job. She's going to be working at a high school. Now, of course, Agnes doesn't want her working at all because it's all about the status, and you're not supposed to be working if you have money. But anyway, she left the other school that she was working, and now she's working at a high school. And this is supposed to be for all uh, ethnicities, religions, colors, background. Everybody can go and 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 go to the school that she's going to be teaching at. So I think that's great. But of course, Agnes is not here for it. So we'll see what happens there. But I really, really hope that Larry doesn't do anything to try to, take over this guy's invention, Jack's invention, or anything like that. Speaking of which, they meet later on, but now they're over at the Russell's house. And Larry seems to be having a problem reading, the diagrams and things of that nature. And so Jack is like, hey, do you need me to go with you? And he's like, no, trust me, I got it under control or whatever. And then someone brings in some coffee, and there's a little bit of back and forth about this coffee. It's already awkward. He's a footman and he's sitting here, having coffee with Larry Russell. I think he denies the coffee at first and then he may take it, but he runs into Idlehide, which is the little girl that I think he's sweet on that works over at the Russell's place, and she's just like, "Oh, I didn't like the way you made him feel when he had to bring you coffee, and I think you're getting a little bit above yourself." And he's like, "What do you mean? Like I didn't say anything to him, and I didn't even take the coffee." And so you can already tell that people are starting to get in their feelings, thinking that Jack is being a little bit more than what he thinks he is, and I think he's being completely humble. I mean, he didn't say, "Hey, I'll take some cream in my coffee." He didn't say anything like that, and I think people are just getting ready to start being in their feelings about him and his success. And I always felt like, you don't need people like that around. So I think he was sweet on that girl, Idle High, but he don't need to be with her because she's a hater. She's sounding and feels like to me that she's just kind of hating on him. So later for Idle High. All right, so let's finish off talking about the Russells. So they're at dinner, and it's Bertha, Gladys, and Larry. They're all having dinner, and Bertha is telling the kids that she did hear from the Duke and that he is planning a visit really soon. And she's like, Gladys, he asked about you, girl. And she's like, and I don't know nothing about him, and he doesn't know nothing about me. And just then Larry's like, listen, I'm gonna go to the Met tonight and catch the last showing of the last show or whatever. And so Gladys is like, ooh, can I go? And she's like, absolutely not. And so here comes the manipulation. So Gladys is like, you do want me to spend some time with your little Duke, right? When he comes this summer. So if that's what you want me to do, you would let me go. And so she's like, all right, you can go with Larry. Y'all just have fun and just be careful, whatever. So what Bertha don't know is that over at the Met, Mrs. Fish has kind of been playing matchmaker a little bit and kind of set it up to where Billy can meet her over there, and Larry is aware as well. And so they're all in Mrs. Fish's box and they're just having a good time, laughing and just being in love. And you can see that Billy's mom is also there with Mrs. Fish. And after the show, Mrs. Fish actually talks to Larry about Bertha. It's like, listen, your mom is very calculating. She's doing what all she can to make sure that Gladys marries this Duke. So, we'll just see how this turns out. But everybody seems to love the fact that Billy and Gladys are hitting it off, everybody except for Bertha. So at an event a couple of days later, she runs into Billy's mom, who is unaware that Bertha even know anything about Gladys and Billy being together. And so she's talking to Bertha about it. And Bertha is like completely blindsided with Mrs. Fish just sitting there in the middle, looking like the cat that swallowed the canary. And so later on, Mrs. Fish is like, yeah, I'm going to have to pay for that. And so you could tell that Bertha is just livid at the fact that she was blindsided by her kids and that Gladys was seen at the Met with Billy instead of the Duke, of course. So later on, she pulls Larry off to the side and she calls herself scolding him. And, listen, you're young, you're a fool. And I know that those two go together, but I am not. I know what's best for Gladys. Gladys can be opened up to so many new worlds. She can influence politics. She can influence, the development of this nation. I mean, can't you just see as the wife of a duke what doors can be open for her? But um Larry is like, well, she doesn't love him. What about love? And he's like, yeah, she's like, yeah, 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 love schmov. We don't care about that. We just want her to be with this duke, and that's what's gonna happen, right? So she also has the same conversation with Gladys later on that evening, and Gladys is not here for it. It was a complete disaster. The meeting, their conversation just blows up, and Gladys ends up storming out of the room and packs a bag and ends up actually leaving the house. Now we know that the kids, talking about Gladys and Larry, did have a conversation as well. And they're like, look, we need to get dad back here quickly, because if not, as long as he's gone, that Duke's going to come in town and who knows what's going to happen. By the time George gets back in town, they could be married and on their second or third baby. So he needs to get back right away. And so they do send a telegram for him to come back. And that's what I was saying earlier in the review, that they did send word for him to come back and he is headed back. But honey, when he gets back and he sees that Gladys is not at the house and she done ran off, it's not going to be good for Miss Bertha. So she needs to hurry up and get that child back in that house before he gets home. But anyway, that is the end of the episode. If I missed anything, you guys let me know. I thought, like I said again, that this was a great first episode of the third season. I'm excited to see what happens. You guys let me know down in the comments what y'all thought about it. Let me know what you think about poor Aurora and her marriage that is now over. They're going to dive into divorce. They're going to dive into all kinds of stuff this season. And I'm here for it. I think it's going to be pretty entertaining. But that is it for me. You guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you the next time we do it. All right. Bye.